Testing, testing. Does this sound okay? All right. Welcome, everybody. Thanks for coming to Building a Strong Engineering Culture. So today, this session is going to be, well, it's meant to be a roundtable discussion, but as you can see, we're not at a table, and it's not round. So we're going to need to get a little bit creative here, but the goal of this session is not for me to stand up here and tell all of you what makes a great engineering culture and how to do that. It's more about you sharing your ideas, your experiences, your questions, and we're going to have a little bit of a dialogue or a discussion and hopefully come to some conclusions together. So you'll see there's a microphone in the middle of the room here, so I'll ask you if you have a question or if you have a comment to come up and use the mic. I'll be up here, and I'm going to do my best to keep track of the topics that we're discussing and take some notes for all of us to look at together. This is one of my favorite quotes, by the way. There are two hard things in computer science: cache and validation, naming things, and errors off by one. So we're going to try not to have any errors off by one today, but maybe we will. So before we jump into the topic, how's the font size on this? Can everybody see it okay? All right, good. Before we jump into the topic, I was going to have everyone here do intros. I think we're a little bit too big of a group to do that, so I'll just share with you a little bit about me, and I'll get to know you through the questions that you ask and the comments that you share. So my name is Chuck. I am an Android engineer. I've been doing Android more or less since 2009. I got involved in Android in the early days when I was working at Comcast and working on a project that was a partnership with Samsung. Later spent about 4 years at Samsung. I've also worked at a lot of different startups, including the most recent one I was at was Fundrise, investment platform, where I was a director of engineering. And I've recently left to start a new opportunity, which if you all are interested in learning more about that, come talk to me afterwards. But I've had a lot of experience in Android. I've been an engineer for over 20 years, and I've been leading teams for over 10 years in different capacities. But that doesn't mean that I have all the answers. And again, this is not meant to be me telling you or dictating what engineering culture is all about, but I want to have a discussion. I want to hear from you. I know a lot of you are probably senior in your career, leading teams. You have a lot of insights. You've been at different companies than me. I want to harness that and help put our minds together to come to some conclusions together today. How does that sound? Okay? All right. Thanks, Nick. So I'm going to kick us off with the first question here. Which is what makes a great engineering culture. There are some other prepared questions that we can get into if we need to, but I'm hoping that this is going to be the catalyst to send us in whatever direction you all want to talk about. So let's start with this one. Can I have a first taker at the microphone that wants to give me one thing that, or multiple things that you think makes a great engineering culture? Remember, this is a round table.
So what I think makes a great engineering culture is having all your engineers being able to share their ideas, like don't get a lot of criticism, mostly support, and if there is any criticism, it's like constructive and thoughtful and respectful, and just to make sure that engineers feel comfortable sharing their ideas and learning and growing, especially the juniors.
Thanks, Brian. Yeah, please go ahead.
So I would put this under the umbrella of psychological safety, which some of these are, but the ability to ask any question without a downside.
I love that. There's a certain aspect of vulnerability that we need to be willing to embrace on our teams. Ask for help when you need it. Admit when you don't know something, right? And I think that adds a lot to the culture. And I think between both of you did a good job of capturing that. Yeah, please go ahead. What else makes a great engineering culture?
Yeah, two things for me. It's engineers that are consistently learning and bettering their skills, and then I think there's like always a big push for like EI, like emotional intelligence. But I think what's really good is when managers or other team members can be available too, and just soak in what you're saying without interrupting and forcing their own agenda. So like those are some important things for me. Yeah, thanks.
Thank you.
Do we have to use the mic? Because I could just yell, but I think maybe for recording reasons. Anyway, I was just going to say all these are great. Like I love all these, and you need to keep adhering to these even as you become a senior team member. Because I'm old, so I'm a senior team member, and it's
You
really
and me both.
Yeah, and it's really important for someone who's a senior. You find a lot of senior people, they're afraid to look like they're inexperienced or ignorant in front of others, so they stop asking those questions and they just talk the whole time, which I definitely still do that. But being open to showing that you have no idea what's going on sometimes, it helps enable younger folks and less experienced folks to adhere to these as well. So, yeah.
I'm going to capture that as even when you become more senior, you still need to be an example to the junior engineers and not, oh, okay, well now I made it, so I don't need to follow these principles anymore, right?
I looked at this list again, I'm like, what is missing, I think? And it's kind of in the same area of learning and growth, but just never, like being hungry. You want to learn the next thing too, so you don't settle with having learned everything. There's always more curiosity in this type of group.
Yeah.
And an understanding about what you don't know is bigger than what you know. So a group that is a really strong engineering culture has not become an expert and has stopped like being curious about things. They're always still curious.
Thank you. Yeah, please go ahead.
I can give a couple of examples from our company culture deck, which I think apply engineering as well. So the first one is trust, so that if someone says that he or she is going to do it, you can believe that they will take care of that. Or if they won't be able to do that, they will ask for help, or just make sure that you don't have to follow up or constantly keep bugging them, like where you are with that, because that if someone has been said, then it will be taken care of. The other one I want to raise out is learning from failures. If you haven't made a mistake, make sure you will let everyone else know about that and make sure they won't do the same mistake again. So we actually do drink champagne if we make a mistake, like a big one. And I mean, that's why I have a champagne belly. So, it's really cool practice.
Cheers. I'm going to add learn and celebrate failures. Learn from and celebrate failures. This is great. Let me, so I'm noticing a trend here, and we're going to continue. I'm noticing a trend of a lot of things from the individual developer's perspective, sort of the team dynamic perspective, and that's a big part of engineering culture. But at the end of the day, as a team, we also need to deliver, right? We need to execute. We need to, meet goals. What are some things that enable the culture on the team to be able to do that? And you don't have to change what you were going to say if you're already in line. But just wanted to put that out there as another angle we could come at this from. All right, so please.
All right, I wanted to offer a slight counterpoint to senior being an example. I love that, and I think it's a great thing, and being an example for more junior members, but also a bit of rank irreverence. I mean, sometimes some of the best ideas come from the people who aren't really bogged down on like all of the history of the code. And so like having top-down idea structures is one way to really block a lot of the people who can come up with good ideas.
So you're saying have ideas come from the top, but also from the bottom up?
Well, just not worry about if you're a junior or senior so
Oh,
much.
not worry about where it comes from. Yeah.
Irreverence of ranks.
Thank you.
It's kind of similar to trust, but leaders being hands-off, like being okay with taking a step back, allowing other team members to make mistakes. Yeah.
Thanks. Right, and I think that also speaks to the trust element, trusting your team to execute.
I wanted to add a culture of support. So when I worked at, I guess it's Meta now, Facebook is a huge company, and when I started, I was trying to figure out how I could get context on this code, huge code base, and I was just told, message the engineer who wrote it. And I was like, but he's not on my team. Explaining it to me isn't in his OKRs. They're like, but it's his job to help you. It's our culture. And that actually, I found that was true. It's one of the only things I really liked about working there. And I see that in my current company, Pinterest, also, that everyone supports you. So I think this is very important that there's not, I know you were asking about how companies deliver.
Yeah.
But I think at the same time, it's important not to be so narrowly focused on delivering that we forget the fabric of how the company works.
Thank you, that's a great one.
So a
yes,
culture
please,
of
go ahead.
ownership as well helps.
Yeah.
Like if there is a culture of ownership in the company, like how do you drive ownership in your engineers, and now, how do you help them to deliver results at a good speed? And that's something that generally builds a good repo across.
Yeah, ownership is great. I was waiting for someone to put that one out there because that, to me, embodies a lot of things. It embodies how we do our work, but also accountability, like caring about the experience that the user or the customer has when using the app, and that really captures a lot of things and makes, in my experience, makes engineers, team members willing to go the extra mile and maybe help someone outside of their team or who has different KPIs than themselves because they have a sense of ownership, not just over their own work, but over the product and the service that you're building together. Great, excuse me. So I think that's one that this is a good time for us to transition and start to think about, okay, let's work backwards. Now that we have a working definition of what makes an engineering culture a good one, how do we get there? How do we cultivate this culture at the companies where we're working? And you could share an experience of somewhere that you've worked in the past or currently, or something that you wish you were doing more of, maybe that you're not doing today.
So in terms of getting there, I think one of the things that really helps is, I don't know if this is the best term, but servant leadership. Like when you have examples of leaders at every level at your company who are willing to do all of those things and be humble and be willing to learn from everyone else. Because like somebody said, like ideas come from everywhere. That's the sort of thing that tends to spread. Like when one person is really setting a good example, not just as a contributor, but as a leader, that's the sort of thing that other people catch on to. And when that, I find that is one of the best ways of spreading a good culture, because you're seeing it as somebody who maybe works with this person, you're seeing it, but you're noticing how it benefits you. And then when you eventually apply it, you see how it benefits someone else. So it's something that gets spread without being taught, because if somebody writes that on a document and says, we need to do X, Y, and Z, it's difficult to prescribe behaviors. But when somebody emulates it in person, then it's a totally different approach. And I think that's the best way for ideas to spread. And leadership shouldn't be structured, it shouldn't be defined by a role. It should just be a trait. And so we want to get to a point where every single person feels like a leader because they have influence on someone else, even if it's one other person in the company. And at that point, I feel like you have a stronger culture.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. And by the way, I love seeing all the past year droidcon shirts. It's 2023, 2024. Great to see repeat customers. But going back to the point you made about leading you can lead from any position, right? It's not just leadership roles that can lead, or management roles that can execute or provide leadership. It can be anyone. You can lead up, you can lead down, you can lead with your peers. It's a trait, like you said. So I think that's awesome. Thank you. And the more people that exercise that, the more you're going to start to build a good culture. Okay, please go ahead.
Yeah, one point I'd like to make, I think it's really tough to do, but one of the things that would help get there is not to project your thoughts, your ideas, your vision on others' opinions too much, and try to, part of it is listening, but it's so hard for us to, we all come with experiences and our own conclusions in life, and a lot of time we tend to, when we're hearing others, we quickly jump to these conclusions based on our own experiences, and trying to step back from that, I think, is important in order to cultivate that culture, but it's a very hard thing to do. So.
Yeah, that's an excellent one, and that reminds me of a book by David Rock, Your Brain at Work, and he talks about the neuroscience behind exactly what you just explained. The way that we take shortcuts, the way that our brain takes shortcuts, is actually something we've evolved to do over time out of necessity, because analyzing every little piece of data and making a decision in detail for everything is just literally impossible for us to do. So our brain develops these shortcuts. It's like, oh, I've seen this pattern before, and this is how it ends up, right? But what happens is that's how bias sneaks into our decision-making process, because maybe you see this new situation and you think it's the same as the one you saw last year or at your previous company, but it's actually completely different, but we miss that because we have these baked-in shortcuts. And so it's good to check ourselves and pause sometimes before we jump to a conclusion or project our own opinions onto this new situation. So yeah, thank you for offering that. Okay, please, let's keep going.
Yeah, that's a good segue into what I was going to say, which is kind of related to both of these. I think having a good understanding of what makes a not so great culture so that you can, to help you get there, is also not going to the place you don't want to go. And I feel like we all have stories about something that we don't want to ever have to run into again.
Yep, I'm sure we all do. I'm even going to add this as a new category that we're going to get to here, or rather that we're going to do in parallel with not only how do we build a great culture, but what are some of the pitfalls, the anti-patterns that we want to avoid that could take us not in the direction we want to be going. So thank you.
I'm thinking about what is a good breeding ground for great culture. And one of the things that I have found that actually works well is having enough space to make mistakes, a tolerance for risk, and an understanding with your leadership about where you're allowed to take risks and where they really don't want them. And you can build the trust part and the learning from failure part if you understand where the table stakes are for those things and where you're allowed to actually take risks. So you can build up your ability to do blameless postmortems and do those types of things in the spaces that aren't freaking out your leadership. And then there are places where they don't want to have an incident in that space, and they don't have much of a tolerance for a lot of risk-taking in that space, and they really don't want to see that as the first place you play those like ideas out in. So where we call it, one of my old bosses called it FIGs, which are F's you give. Like, how many F's do you give about this problem? Like, are we allowed to really like innovate in this space and learn, or do you really want that space to be rock solid and that's not where we should be doing those things? So that can help you build trust in places over time. So yeah, you have to be able to fail somewhere, and if you're not allowed to fail at all, then you really can't build this culture. So.
That's great, thank you. So we still have the anti-pattern category, which I'm going to keep up there because I have a feeling some of these are going to come out as we go deeper into the topic. What I want to do now is get a little bit more specific. So we've identified some pretty good general categories. What are some like specific practices that you've seen, that you've put in place or that you've been a part of at your companies that allow these things to grow, to be successful, to take hold? Are there any like recurring rituals that you do with your teams, or documentation, or onboarding practices? How do you ingrain this and internalize it to the team's fabric?
So actually, I have an anti-pattern, and that's like micromanaging or giving answers too quickly. You should be, like in a PR or even just in Slack, like asking more questions that lead your engineers to an answer, and not just giving them the answer right away.
Yep, absolutely. Encourage them to try and help guide them as a leader, help guide them to the solution on their own, as opposed to handing them the answer too, is another way. One of my mentors always told me when an engineer would come to him on his team and ask him, or tell him that he has a problem, like, oh, this thing's not working, can you help me fix it? He would always start with two questions. What have you tried, and what did you learn? And then from there, they would try and find a solution together, as opposed to saying, okay, well, actually, no, I've seen this before, here's how you fix it, and letting his own past experience or biases take over. Yeah, great. Let's keep going.
Yeah, I was going to mention one of the concrete things that my team does is that every morning after stand-up, we have like 30 minutes scheduled for a tech huddle. Sometimes there's nothing to talk about, but a lot of times you find something in stand-up that's a technical issue that you can all just sit around and chat about or come to a solution, or it's also an opportunity for senior devs to bring how they solved a particular problem and share that learning with the more junior devs on the team.
Great. Yeah, at some of the companies I've worked where we've done a similar thing, we used to call that the parking lot. And if something comes up that we were getting into the weeds during stand-up, we'd be like, okay, let's park that, and then afterwards we'll go deep in the parking lot.
One thing I tend to utilize is a technique, especially with junior devs, to kind of create that strong engineering culture. It's called the 3 A's: acknowledge, align, assure. A lot of times there's confusion about what's going on. Maybe there is a sense of there is very much risk involved on something I don't know. In moments like that, we speak about what leadership looks like, acknowledging that you've been in their shoes, aligning with them, and figuring out that that is something that you can tackle together as a team, and assuring that not only you're a resource for them, but also they could be a resource for someone else, and kind of creating that culture for them to not only take ownership, but also feel like they have the support to take whatever risk they need to for the sake of the project.
That's great, thank you.
I wanted to give one anti-pattern and two practices, if that's okay.
Yeah, please.
So first off, for the anti-pattern, I think when you have somebody who's very, very skilled, like a lead engineer, distinguished engineer or something, just having everyone follow that person, like let that person become a prescriptive influence in the team, that is something that leads to kind of like the starvation of ideas. And so everyone is kind of morphing into that one engineer, whereas you should really have a democracy of ideas. And on that note, I think the RFC process is great to encourage people to bring their ideas to the team and have a real chat about it. Let other people weigh in a structured way, and just going through the RFC process as a junior member, like it's a great learning opportunity. Plus, as you write the RFC, you're actually evaluating your own idea and working against it in your mind. So you might end up with something better than if you just go and pitch something, without doing the research and the write-up on it. And then, of course, RFC will be followed up by a decision record, just to say like, okay, this is what the team said, this is what I thought, and this was the compromise, we're going to implement it or not, and have the team be okay with an RFC that doesn't turn into something that, that results in a change. Just the process of doing it is a success. And then the second one, which is kind of related, is promoting proof of concepts So sometimes people will come and have, really big ideas that may vary a lot from what is currently, in place. And in that case, even if the whole team is like a little bit scared, you can say, okay, I'm not 100% sure this is the right fit for us, but if you can do a POC and do a demo for us and show us what the advantages of this approach are, then we can think about implementing it at a larger scale. Again, this is something that promotes learning and ownership of ideas. And if it happens to be a bad idea, you kind of figure that out much sooner in a controlled way. It's kind of like a sandbox. So yeah, thank you.
That's great. Thank you.
One thing I want to add, I think encouraging data-driven decisions is very important, because a lot of times, again, going back to biases, you make decisions and you think they're great and you find out really late that it wasn't the right decision. Not that what you did was bad, but it just wasn't the right decision for the situation you were in. So really encouraging data-driven decisions is important.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. Speaking of data-driven decisions, it can be hard to figure out what, in my experience, sometimes the biggest challenge is figuring out what are the metrics that you want to base that decision on. Can be just as challenging as like identifying the right metrics can be even more challenging than like knowing or what am I trying to say? Like the threshold that it needs to be at, but are you even looking at the right metrics in the first place? On that note, I'm going to make a plug for Brian's session tomorrow, which is going to be about engineering and developer productivity metrics. We can talk a little bit about that today, but there's a whole roundtable devoted to that tomorrow, so definitely come check that out. Okay, let's keep going. Thank you.
All right, so I feel like this is pretty basic and obvious, but I'm going to say it anyway. And that's just make a concerted effort to build relationships, whether it's through one-on-ones or non-work-related events or something. But like, there's been so many times where I've had some sort of clash with someone personally that bleeds into our work, and then I realize that they're just kind of blunt. They're not an asshole, and so like it's a lot easier to take criticism from someone and give criticism to someone when you actually understand that person. You don't have to be friends with them, but if you understand how they work and how their mind functions, it's a lot easier to have a good working relationship with that person.
Yeah, that's great. And that actually brings me to another thing I wanted to throw into the mix here. Let's see, how are we doing on time? Looks like we have 10 more minutes. Okay. Before I put this up here, can I get a show of hands? How many people work in office full-time, 5 days a week currently? I'm actually not putting my hand up because I don't. One? Okay, a couple. How many people are fully remote? And that includes me. Okay, that's most of us, but not everyone, so the rest are hybrid, right? Okay, so we've got a number of hybrids here too. So particularly for those of you in hybrid or fully remote environments, what things have you found to help promote a positive engineering culture? Because this is fairly new, right? Up until 4 or 5 years ago, we were all primarily in office. There were some remote roles, but it's not as common as it is today, so it's something that we've needed to get better at. Anyway, just wanted to throw that in there as another dimension. And the reason the last comment made me think of that is because it's harder to have some of these casual conversations like relationship building, get to know each other moments. It can be more challenging to do that in a remote culture. Okay, so let's keep going.
I wanted to just plug again the blameless postmortem. And I know we have get blame and we have you did this. I really liked the idea of as soon as it is committed and it has made it through review, it is no longer yours, it is ours. And any sort of fallout that happens from it is ours to solve too. So I would often find us in like an incident situation and say, no, we're not gonna figure out who did this. It's like we're gonna figure out what the problem is. We can save some of the save it for the postmortem, where we figure out exactly what the offending PR was or things like that. But I think that a shared ownership part that goes back to the ownership, you can use language to reinforce that. There is a anti-pattern associated with this that I wanted to mention that's heroing. It's heroing when it's good and it works, but it's also like, fall on the sword, I did this, I caused this problem. It's like, okay, well, what review process, what tests did we have that didn't fail and didn't, like, there's a whole bunch of people involved in, like, deploying something and undeploying something.
Yeah.
So the ownership part can go even when things are going well. And I think that that is something that is hard when you want to have attribution for your work and you want to get credit for that in order to get promo and those types of things. But also, it's when those things are a challenge, suddenly the blame part comes out. So the blameless postmortem helps in both.
Yeah.
So yeah. Anyway.
Thank
okay.
you.
Yeah, I was going to mention an activity my team did during COVID was we did remote beer tasting together. So they actually shipped us out a handful of different beers, and then we got on like a Zoom call with someone from the brewery, and they walked us through that. So just because you're not co-located doesn't mean there's not events that you can do or plan together.
I'm glad that beer made it into the notes from this talk. I consider that a success. So we've covered a lot of ground here, and thank you everyone for the contributions. Are there any outstanding questions that you have, challenges that you're grappling with related to the engineering culture that you want to share in this format and get input? And I understand that this is being recorded and all of that, so we can anonymize things. You don't have to give the specifics, but is there, we've got a lot of, or, again, I'll just plant this seed. After this session is over, I believe they're going to have some drinks and we're going to have some casual time here, speaking of beer tasting, after the event. So have that conversation. Everyone here brings a variety of perspectives, a variety of experiences, and harness the power of your peers, your colleagues here to get fresh eyes or fresh input on some challenges that you're dealing with. But that said, is there anyone dealing with a specific challenge right now that you want to talk about and share with the group and get input?
One of the challenges that I've faced is sometimes if when you're developing that culture as a team, there's a lot of buy-in that's required and effort initially before it becomes smooth. But when you're trying to influence the people around you, they might not be keen to change how they do things, especially if you're not their manager telling them to do something. They might not take it well coming from a peer saying hey, maybe we should do this differently, because it's why are you telling me what to do? How, so I guess the question is how can you influence those around you when you're not yet at a point where you can say we have a good culture?
Yeah, how to influence when it's not following the reporting chain, right? Does anyone want to take a crack at that one? Yeah, Nick, go for it. I know we could all hear you without the mic, but it's for the recording.
That's a really good question, and a lot of worlds we live in, work in now, are like that, where there's not a strong base because of the way we've described here. Strong hierarchy is kind of discouraged, right? And so, how do you convince people that you're right? That's kind of what we're saying, right? How do we convince people that we're right? And the answer is very, very slowly, with lots of patience, and with the open idea that you want, possibly what you're suggesting to everyone isn't right. Not you. I mean, because I've been there. I've been you gotta do it this way. Oh, snap, I'm wrong. So just lots of patience and a management that's willing to let your whole organization move slowly to new solutions sometimes, because you need people to organically come to a conclusion. And not to say that everything, if you wait for a committee to come up with everything, that also is too slow. So it's a balance, So yeah, actually, I have no clue what the answer is, but it's somewhere in between dictating what everyone should do and just having everyone do their own thing. There's somewhere in between that, and the most important thing is patience, I think, maybe.
Thanks, Nick.
Maybe one thing I'd add, just be diplomatic. Sometimes you accept something from others they're more willing to accept from you. So that's kind of a way to guide people.
Yeah, that's a good one. And I wonder if, you know, now that we've identified some of the challenges or some of the roadblocks that can get in the way, if we look back at some of the other practices and principles that we've already discussed, building relationships and leading by example, I think, can lay a lot of the groundwork to be able, and building trust can cultivate an environment where you can have that sort of influence. You know, you kind of lay the groundwork in advance. I get that, especially when you're coming into like a new situation or a new team, it can take time. And so I think the patience comment is also very appropriate, because you want to build that trust, build those relationships, and then really push for the change that you think would benefit the team overall. Let's see, so we do need to wrap up. We've got, I think, 2 minutes left here. I did want to share a couple other practices that I've done in the past that I think are really beneficial, especially also in the hybrid environment and remote. One is having time besides the virtual events, but just for the team to get together and casually interact. This is kind of like a similar, it doesn't have to be a big deal like a beer tasting or a virtual game night. You can do those, but just having a Monday morning check-in where you can have water cooler chat can go a long way to kind of making some of the communication a little less formal, a little less structured, and kind of promote that relationship building. Another one is, I don't know, I can't remember if anybody mentioned this or not, but brown bags or internal dev talks is one that I've seen work really well to get the team collaborating in, you know, this goes back to like the idea of proof of concepts and RFCs, being able to experiment, being able to fail, being able to learn from each other in that process, and having anyone promote their ideas regardless of their role or their rank. And the last one I wanted to mention is to just, and again, this is kind of the same note, but just make time for play, whether that be through demos of like testing some new thing, or even playing a game with your team, I think can really help. Again, like in a hybrid remote world, a lot of the communication we have feels so structured and rigid that it can be nice to break out of that once in a while, or even when you're in person, but especially when we're looking at each other on a screen. So with that, I think we're just about out of time. Does anyone have any last thought they wanted to share to close us out? All right, I guess we solved it. Now everyone's going to go back and be a champion of engineering culture at your company. Well, thanks again for coming and for providing your input, sharing your experiences, being vulnerable. And I'm going to find a way to share out these notes with everyone here so that, well, not just with everyone here, but to make them available. And if anyone has any other questions or wants to continue the chat, come find me afterwards. Thanks again.